The distress beacon had been screaming into the void for 11 days before anyone answered. Captain Elena Marsh stood on the bridge of the USS Cold Harbor, watching the tactical display paint a lonely red dot against a field of black. The signal was weak, degraded, stretched thin across 4 light years of nothing. But it was still a signal, still a voice calling out for help. "Clean it up," she said. "I want to hear what they're saying." Lieutenant Commander Danny Okafor worked the console, fingers moving with the practiced speed of a man who'd spent 6 years turning garbage data into something usable. The static hissed, cracked, and then words. Broken, alien in cadence, but unmistakably a plea. "Hull breach, 3 decks flooding, reactor critical. Anyone, please, anyone." "The translation matrix is running," Okafor said. "Give it a second." Marsh didn't need the translation to understand the tone. Fear sounded the same in every language in the universe. She'd heard it in training exercises, in the Mars evacuation of 61, in her own voice once, 20 years ago, trapped in a burning shuttle over Europa. "Helm, plot an intercept course. Best speed." Ensign Priya Talbot looked up from navigation, hesitation flickering across her face. "Captain, that's outside our patrol sector. Command hasn't authorized." "Command isn't listening to that beacon." "I am." Marsh's voice didn't rise, but it didn't need to. "Plot it." The ship they found 4 hours later looked like something had taken a bite out of it. The vessel was alien in design, elongated, insectal, its hull plated in a bronze-green alloy that shimmered strangely under the Cold Harbor's running lights. Whole sections had been torn away, venting the atmosphere in slow, dying gasps that froze instantly into glittering crystal clouds. Debris drifted in a lazy halo around the wreck, tumbling in the starlight like the wreckage of a funeral. "My God," Okafor whispered. "What did that to them?" "Life signs," Marsh asked. The science officer, a quiet, meticulous man named Gabriel Reyes, hunched over his console, running scans. "I'm reading 41, maybe 43. Weak. Sections 7 through 12, mostly. They're clustered together. Looks like they retreated to one part of the ship and sealed it off." "Trying to survive," Marsh said quietly. "Captain." Talbot's voice had gone tight. "I'm picking up debris signatures. Weapons fire. Whatever hit them wasn't an accident. This was an attack." Marsh felt the old cold settle into her chest, the one that came before every hard decision she'd ever made. Could the attacker still be in the area? "No contacts on long range," Reyes said. "But that doesn't mean much out here. Sensor range is garbage this far from any gravity well." She stood there a moment, weighing it. A crippled alien ship. An unknown attacker that might still be lurking somewhere in the dark, waiting for scavengers or rescuers to show themselves. Command would tell her to hold position, to report up the chain, to wait for authorization that might take days to arrive, days those 43 lives didn't have. "Helm, bring us alongside." "Mr. Okafor, hail them. Let them know help is here." "Captain, if there's a hostile out there, then we'll deal with it," Marsh said. "But I'm not leaving people to die in the dark because paperwork hasn't caught up to the moment. Send the hail." The response, when it came, wasn't words at first. It was a sound, a low, broken keening that the translation matrix struggled to parse, and then finally rendered into something like a sob. "You came. You actually came." The voice belonged to someone who identified themselves, after the matrix smoothed out the syntax, as ranking officer Velashun of a trade consortium vessel called the Threnody. Marsh listened as the translated words tumbled out. Raiders, an ambush near a shipping lane, no military escort because their people didn't believe in maintaining warships, and hadn't needed to in generations. They'd sent the beacon out on every frequency they had, not truly believing anyone would come. Their own kind was too far. Their allies didn't patrol this deep. "We didn't think anyone would answer," Ashun said, voice cracking through the calm. "We've heard of your kind. Humans. We were told you don't get involved in things that aren't yours." Marsh exchanged a glance with Okafor, who looked like he wanted to say something and thought better of it. "Well," Marsh said into the calm, "somebody told you wrong. The rescue took 6 hours. Marsh sent over engineering teams to stabilize the failing reactor, medical teams to treat the wounded, and EVA crews to cut through jammed bulkheads where survivors were trapped behind warped metal. It was ugly, Exhausting work in freezing corridors lit only by emergency strips and the beams of human flashlights. Ensign Talbot personally carried an injured alien child, small, trembling, wrapped in a thermal blanket 3 sizes too big, through 2 decks of wreckage because the girl's parents couldn't leave the medical bay where her mother lay unconscious. At one point, deep in the guts of the dying ship, Reyes found something that made his blood run cold. A secondary distress log, recorded just before the attack, addressed to no one in particular. A message in case help never came. A goodbye? He didn't tell the survivors he'd found it. He just deleted it quietly and kept working. By the time the last survivor was pulled from the wreck, an engineer who'd wedged himself into a maintenance crawl space to keep a failing coolant line from rupturing, buying his crewmates another hour of air, the Cold Harbor's medical bay was overflowing into the mess hall, cots lined up between the tables where humans usually ate breakfast. Marsh walked the rows herself. 43 survivors. 43 heartbeats that had been on a countdown to 0, now steady, now breathing recycled human air, now alive. 3 days later, as the Threnody survivors were transferred to a consortium relief ship that had finally, belatedly, arrived, Ashun found Marsh on the observation deck, watching the transfer shuttles cross the gap between the 2 vessels. "I don't understand," Ashun said, standing beside her, the alien's 4 eyes reflecting the starlight strangely. "Your command reprimanded you. I read the transmission logs. You broke protocol by answering us." "I did. Then why?" Marsh was quiet for a moment, thinking of Europa, of a beacon nobody had answered fast enough, of the 4 crewmates who hadn't made it out of that burning shuttle 20 years ago. "Because somewhere out there," she said finally, "somebody's kid is going to be lost and scared and calling for help that they don't think is coming. And I decided a long time ago that if I ever heard that call, I wasn't going to be the one who hesitated." Ashun didn't have words for that, not right away. So they simply stood together at the window, watching the last shuttle dock, watching 43 lives continue on into whatever came next, alive, because for once, in the vast, indifferent dark, someone had answered.